Let's bring in Ryan Graves, a former Navy pilot and the co-founder of the Americans for Safe Aerospace. Ryan, thanks so much for joining us again. We were talking a little bit earlier. Does this report address what you and your squadron were seeing flying out there on the East Coast?
Well, no, this report that was released by the AARO office is a historical look going back to about 1940 and onward. The cases that we experienced in the 2014 to 2015 period off the coast of Virginia Beach and Florida were not addressed, and we still don't know what those objects were. Reports are still coming in from the Eastern Seaboard and elsewhere that pilots are experiencing objects today now that we're not really sure what they are, and they have been demonstrating, as this report used, concerning performance characteristics.
And Ryan, as I understand it, there are two reports that are due to Congress. One was supposed to look at things that happened from the 1940s to 2023. Your incidents fall into that. The Nimitz incident in 2004 off the coast of California, that falls into that. I didn't see anything about that in the report. Is there any possibility that what you saw may be addressed in the next report that's supposed to come out?
That's a possibility, but you're absolutely right. It does not include any of the more modern cases that have been traditionally considered unexplained. In the 2018 time period, if we recall, or excuse me, 2017 period, there was a couple of videos that were released by the New York Times, one labeled the gimbal and another the go fast. These were the cases on the Eastern Seaboard, and there it is there, that still remain unexplained at this time.
And Brian, you know, how quickly the public forgets, but you were there the day that Grush testified. I remember there were two different issues brought to Congress that day that we were watching for. One, the testimony of you and other pilots like David Fravor about seeing things in the sky that you couldn't explain. And then there was this whole crash retrieval stuff. And the way I remember it, as soon as people heard someone tell Congress about like non-biologics, it almost seemed like whatever had been happening now was totally overshadowed by what may have happened or may not have happened in the past. Do you think that's kind of what's happening in this report?
I do agree with that. You know, it's disappointing. The language in this report is really detrimental to people that want to come forward, witnesses, potential whistleblowers, and also commercial and military pilots that are dealing with this and are fighting through the stigma in order to report these cases. There is pending legislation now within Congress in order to enable pilots, commercial pilots, to be able to report on UAP without fear of repercussions. And you can learn more about that at safeaerospace.org. But this type of report, all it does is diminish the conversation, and it does not leave many options for pilots that have to deal with this now.
That's really interesting, kind of ironic, because like so much of this was about reducing the stigma of just being able to talk about seeing something weird and trying to figure out what it was. I know this is just volume one of what's due to Congress. What comes next based on the people that you've been talking to?
Well, we have to remember the headlines on this story aren't necessarily telling the full report. In the report, it also does mention that they are taking care to be able to deploy sensors at various bases to better understand what the UAP are. So in one hand, they are dismissing the historical context and any potential illegal programs. However, they are taking care to invest in the technology so we can better understand this going forward. So to answer your question, I think the government will likely continue to investigate this, and I encourage the public to keep the pressure on as well.
I'm so glad you brought that up. For me, that's the most fascinating thing, the gremlins, these Pelican cases that, from what we understand, the DOD has been testing out. They're packing them full of sensors, and these are supposed to be rapidly deployed to any hotspot of UFO activity. And that's something that we know is going to happen. What kind of sensors, what will they be looking for?
Yeah, I think, you know, what they'll be looking for, what we call things outside the normal pattern of life. Using hyperspectral sensors, you can look outside the normal visual range, and you have the potential to be able to see objects that are moving or producing energies that we would otherwise not normally be able to see optically. And so by putting these sensors out there, they have the opportunity to catch some of these UAP in action and potentially better understand what they are. It is a problem right now. We do not have the proper reporting mechanisms. The ICIG has said that themselves. And so as we continue to better understand what this is, I think that AARO should leave the door open to at least understanding what these are without putting assumptions about their locations, such as being off-world or potentially extraterrestrial. We can all agree that there's something there and it's responsible for us to be able to know what's flying over our heads within the United States.
And if you would just level with me from what you've seen, do you think this is part of a cover-up, or do you think AARO is truly interested in getting to the bottom of all this?
Well, I think if they were truly interested in getting to the bottom of this, there would be more resources and more time put forward in order to understand the historical context. Ultimately, the only way that people are going to be satisfied with the answer that's given by the Pentagon, AARO, or another office is if there's transparency around the conversation. That's good governance, and we haven't seen that yet.
Hopefully more transparency follows. Ryan, thanks so much for joining us.